Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
When I think of photography, two things come to mind. One is it captures a moment in time, like usually personally something you're experiencing, and it's a memory. It's a recorded memory, and you can go back and look at it, and it opens up the synapses in your brain, and you can recall what you were feeling at the time or what you were thinking. And I love that part about photography. And the second part to me, it's almost like a wistfulness. It can be places you want to be or want to go or want to know more about. They could be positive, they could be negative. I mean, they could be images of a war. You don't want to go to a war, right? But you might want to know more about what's going on. And photography can draw that into that world and like make you want to learn more about it.
Nice. So are you comfortable? Do you have water? Everything's good on your side?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm all good. I put the cat outside. That was the main thing.
Oh, that's a big thing.
Yeah, because she will
Yeah.
make all sorts of noise and get in the way.
Right. Okay, no problem. Okay. I think we're ready to go. So, Carrie, your last name is Carrie Carter.
Correct.
Thank you for joining me on Shooting It Raw. It's really nice to meet you. And please excuse the sounds of trucks and motorcycles going by because that just happens to be where I live.
That's city life.
Yeah,
even sometimes country life.
And we'll totally get to know who you are and share what you've done. And I'm delighted that you're here.
I'm glad to be here. This is exciting.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so let's dive into the first photo. Great. Okay, so fun. The photographer is high above in an audience. There's on the right, you can just see, okay, so there's this kind of weird, like high contrast lighting. On the right, you can just see the shape. Well, basically, you can see the skeletons of a Tyrannosaurus Rex and then another. I'm not really sure what other dinosaurs in the background. There are a couple of other dioramas. There's somebody brought in lights, so it's like stage lights. There's a stage. On the stage are people in costume. The singer seems to be wearing a gold sort of rhinestone something or other. Lots of very, very flashy, wearing a hat. There's a drummer with a Motley Crue shirt, of course. There's probably about 10, 12 people on stage. Nobody's wearing a mask, so it can't have been too recent. There's an audience of about 100 people behind. It's very colorful. Some people are holding drinks. So it's an adult crowd. Yes, in a museum, no less. Oh, and I just noticed one of the people who's looking at the camera. Okay, so the band is looking away from the photographer. One person is wearing what looks like this person. She should be at Rio. She's like dressed up with these like big plumes of red and green and pink and yeah, that's fun. It looks like a good fun time. And I think it's called, so the photo is called Molly and the Ringwalds Party with Dinosaurs.
Yes.
Carrie.
Yes.
What am I looking at?
That is actually my band. I started an 80s cover band 20 years, actually more than 20 years ago now. 20 years ago. And we play private parties, we play corporate events, we play weddings, and we'll do some public events. This was a public event. It's at the museum. I don't know if they do it anymore. We did it for several years in a row, and then it just got to be so overwhelming and chaotic. Like there was thousands of people there when there should have been like 700.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, in that photo, we're playing, but we brought up some local theater actors on stage, and they were singing The Time Warp.
Okay.
And
so what do you do in the band?
I play keyboards and I sing backups. I'm not really that great of a singer, but I will sing backups, and I add the goofy element dance to it all.
Well, okay, Carrie, I don't know you. I mean, and all I know is that you start the conversation off with a bang. It looks like so much fun.
Those parties were fun. They were crazy.
So this is Houston.
Yes, Houston.
Okay, and how long ago was this one? This particular one?
I think that was 2012 because
Oh, okay.
no, 2011. Yeah, because that's the year I made the samba costume. I made that.
Ah,
Yes. And I
nice.
joined a boot camp to get in shape for it.
That's you
That is
in that.
me. That's me in the
That's
samba costume.
whoa. Look, hey. I mean, of everyone in the audience, you are off the chain, off the hook. You look great, and you knew to turn to the photographer at just the right moment.
Yeah, I don't know how I knew that, but I think I just got lucky.
Well, it tells me something. You're also wearing very high white heels, like a good 3 inches on those
Oh,
heels.
yes. They were horrible.
But Carrie, you're kind of crazy. What is this? This is great.
Well, I picked this photo because it says a lot about me in just this one photo. I play in a band.
Hmm.
I love costumes and I like making costumes. I'm not shy because if I'm willing to get out there in that outfit and dance around singing, obviously I'm not shy. And it just shows like
Hmm.
the band, like how successful the band was. There's a huge crowd there. I mean, you can't see all the people because the museum is huge, and obviously the picture could
Sure.
only get a fraction of it. But there's probably about 2,000 people there. It's a
Wow.
big crazy party.
Respect. Okay, so okay, you're clearly a creative kind of type. So you're playing keyboard. You made your own costume. You helped inspire the band to come together. What's the name of the band?
Molly and the Ringwalds.
Oh yeah, of course, Molly and the
Yes,
Ringwald.
and Molly Ringwald does know we exist.
Really?
Yes, years ago, I think it was 2008, we actually got contacted by the Tony Danza show to be on there with Molly Ringwald. We were going to meet Molly Ringwald,
Awesome.
and we're all so excited. They were going to fly us to New York. We were going to play a song. We are going to get to meet her. They were going to do a little segment.
Amazing.
And then the bottom dropped out in the economy, and we got canceled.
Oh no. Oh no. Okay, so how long have you been playing keyboard?
I started taking lessons like I think second grade. My uncle taught me how to. I learned piano. I learned classical, and my uncle taught me. He was a musician. He had his PhD in organ performance. He and if you have, I love telling this story because a lot of people don't know where the saying "pull out all the stops" come from. It's an organ saying. You pull up all the stops and it lets all the
Ah.
air into the pipes, and it's super loud and vibrating, and it's just massive.
Ah.
You can't imagine into how massive it is until you're in a room with it. My uncle showed me once, and tiles were falling off the wall of the church.
Wow. Wow. So look at this, shooting it raw. You learn about pulling all the stops. I love
Yes.
that. That's great. Okay, so one person I had on the podcast, she was talking about how when you meet somebody, it's like you're kind of like unfolding a gift. You're unwrapping a little present, and you don't know what you're gonna get, and it's kind of like, oh, look at that, and and you start off with this photo, and my head's kind of like popping, so the shrink wrap, bubble wrap, pop 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 in my head. What are the different ways that you express yourself creatively? Music,
Music, yes.
costume.
I would say dancing, even though I'm not trained and I'm probably not that good at it. But when I dance, it is what I'm feeling at the time, as good or
Sure.
bad, but you know.
Well, there's a value judgment of you know when you're comparing yourself to that kind of thing. You're being self conscious about it, and you're like, well, is it good or
Well, I'm
bad?
self
And
conscious when I talk about it. When I'm doing it, I don't care.
right,
I don't care how bad it is or goofy it is.
you're not a self conscious person if that's the photo that you're providing as your first one.
Not really. And like somebody recently asked me a question about embarrassing moments, and I was just like, well, I really don't get that embarrassed. I mean, I've had so many
Nice.
wardrobe malfunctions on stage. My favorite one was I had a strapless dress, and I did not wear a
Hmm.
strapless bra under it. I had no bra on. We were
Yeah,
playing at the Fine Arts, and there was an upper stage, upper level, and there were high school students looking down. It was high school appreciation art night, and my top
nice.
fell down. And all the
Wicked.
boys were like, "Yeah, woohoo, yeah!"
Well, first of all, It's, that's all. That may be a problem in the U.S., not a problem in France. You're fine.
Yeah, but here though, everyone's like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Gave him a
It's
good
just
time.
skin. It's just, it's just skin. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Just skin. Okay, this is you're fun. You're a lot of fun. Do you have a creative outlet in your work? Like, is this part of what you do
Oh
for a
no,
living?
my work is anything but creative. My work is about writing about commodities in
Oh,
markets and futures and cash differentials, and it's pretty cut and
oh,
dry.
oh, cash
Yeah,
differentials.
it's exciting
Oh,
stuff.
talk dirty to me. Oh, shooting it raw.
But I do
What about?
write outside of
Yeah.
that. I write
Okay.
creatively
Okay.
outside of that.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. I just noticed something. You are going to be episode 123.
Nice.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Do you want to continue on this photo? Do you want to move on? You're surrounded by dinosaurs. You're surrounded by people who are drinking. You're surrounded. Some people seem to be in costume.
Yeah, nearly everybody had a costume. And these
Awesome.
weren't just like, I put a mask on and whatever. These were like pretty nice over the top costumes. So it was really a lot of fun just to see what people wore. And like
That's
the
great.
first year we played it, they wanted us to judge the costumes, which was such a horrible idea. So we had everybody walk around the room in a circle so we could look at all the costumes. And I was like, what?
That's like hundreds of people. You said.
Yes. So we played 3 or 4 songs and they all marched around in a circle. I'm like, this is
Mm.
bizarre.
So you're in Houston. Did you grow up in Houston?
I actually grew up in LaPorte. It's about half an hour to an hour, depending on what side of Houston you leave from. You know,
Oh, so Texas.
yes, it's about halfway between Houston and Galveston. And
Ah.
it's like chemical petroleum, refineries, all that kind of stuff.
That's why you're glowing. Got it. Got
Right.
it. So let's move on to the next
Sure.
photo. Carrie, this is so fun. Oh, this is so good. Okay, next. Okay. From the pause, the listener knows something is afoot. Okay. So it's a photo of a glass casserole on a kind of a picnic table. In the background, you could just see maybe it's painted green floor. I'm just describing the background, not the point of the photo. The point of the photo is that in this glass casserole, somebody baked a chocolate cake, and then they put some white frosting, and then they put eight strawberries in the white frosting slash whipped cream, and there's sprigs of rosemary. I think
Yes,
it looks like
rosemary.
rosemary, and there's a green dinosaur that's been sprinkled with icing sugar that's walking away. Wait, there's a green dinosaur that's kind of heading off camera, looking off camera. Next to the green dinosaur could be it's a bear or something, some other small thing. And just below or before that it looks like a snail or something. It's hard to know what that is. Crawling. And it's called What's Not to Love Dioramas, Godzilla, and Cake.
Yeah.
Okay, let us into your head. What's going on in there?
You're like, why this photo? I don't even know which topic to pick first because there's 3 reasons why I picked it, and they're all kind of in there. I love dioramas, like especially the little
Hmm.
miniature one, but even the life-size ones you see at the museum. I love
Oh
dioramas,
yeah, yeah.
And one year I made a New Year's resolution to make a diorama, and guess what? I did not do. So
For the whole year?
I didn't do it at all. Well, I make like 50 New Year's resolutions and get like 3 of them done.
You're a nut bar. I love it.
Yeah,
That's
so
great.
Christmas, my mom's like, "Can you make a cake?" And my sister's like, she was like, "I'll do it." And I was like, "No, I'll do it because I'm going to use this as my diorama cake."
Nice,
And I
nice.
put Godzilla in there. I had a little Godzilla.
Yep,
And next to him is a little baby Godzilla. And the one that you said
yep.
looked like a slug is the larva stage of Mothra.
Okay.
So as a
Larva
kid,
stage of
a
a what?
Mothra. I don't.
What's a Mothra?
Mothra is a big giant moth that in some of the movies he fights or she fights Godzilla, and other
Okay.
times they're working
Ah.
together. And I think in the later movies they
Ah.
start to work together, and Mothra has the little
Yeah.
singing twins.
Sure.
So
Okay. I'm saying yes and nodding, but I'm in my head. I'm like, what? So you made this cake.
yes,
Um. Um. Okay. Look, I have this feeling that, like, I have this attitude and thing that everything's symbolic. Everything is a window into the person's mind, into their things. So okay, dioramas, right?
yes,
So in the previous photo, there were the life size dioramas or whatever that were
yeah. There's
there.
some life-size dioramas of
Sure.
plains and
Yeah.
Africa and whatnot. But the you're probably like, why Godzilla? Why did I pick Godzilla and
No.
not like something else for my diorama? Well, as a kid, I was a huge Godzilla fan. I loved all those movies. I watched,
Mm-hmm.
the '70s ones that they're considered kind of a little cheesy,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Mm-hmm.
loved
Mm-hmm.
watching them. I like watching him fight them other monsters, and so I wanted
Own
to
it.
do a
Love
diorama
it.
using Godzilla.
Okay. Well, look, as a creative soul, the fact that you were able to make that costume gives me a sense that you understand. I mean, for people that they have to check it out, the photo either on YouTube or whatever, and subscribe to the podcast. No, but like, I get the sense that you're not, even if you're like this weekend artist or whatever, you know what you're doing. That aesthetic of, oh, I really like Godzilla, and it's a certain, there's a history and there's a, an evolution, and if you followed it for so long, and I like how you said, like, oh, when I was a kid I was a big fan. It's like, no, you're a big fan. You're
I'm
still
still
a
a big
big fan.
fan. Yes, I saw the latest movies as they came out, and I I even wrote an essay critiquing it. I'm like, they should have did this, and they should have done that, and this would have made it better. Because I really wanted the movie to be just like top notch, awesome. It was still good. Don't get me
Sure.
wrong, but it needed more monster fighting in the light.
Got it. Got it.
They had them fighting at nighttime.
Well, okay, let's look at this diorama for a second because, okay, so the one thing that is not happening is conflict.
yeah,
And I'm sure somebody's listening to this is going like, what the hell is going on? What are they talking about? And I'm like, but that tells me something. What does it say? That they're basically, they're like three amigos on a trip through the strawberries.
well, it's really interesting. You said there's no conflict because I actually had a little story in my head when I made the cake and the diorama. Is like they are lost and they're in the snow
Okay.
and they're lizards. So I'm not sure, or two of them are lizards. So I'm not sure how well the snow would how it would affect them. So
Mm-hmm.
they were trying to get home. They're trying to find their way home.
Hmm.
I don't know why that popped into my head when I made it, but
So in terms of your, okay, in terms of your work, it's very analytical. You've got like a slightly, I mean, you're doing finance, yeah?
I don't do finance, but I'm kind of writing about. Well, actually, I do assess the market for the day and then I write about it.
So that says something about what your brain is like. How do you understand biology, natural history? I mean, you're in the museum. I'm thinking natural history because that's where the dinosaurs were. Do you understand the science? Like, how are you informed by that whole part of the world?
Well, interestingly enough, like when I was in high school and college, I did extremely well in the sciences. I did extremely well in mathematics and abstract mathematics. And there was a big
Mm-hmm.
push from everyone around me to go that direction. You know,
Mm.
become an engineer, become a mathematician, do something with it. And I'm just like, it's so boring. Like, I
Right.
really just didn't like it. Now, maybe I could have figured out a way to have made it more interesting. And I think a lot of stuff like engineering and design, there is a very creative aspect to it. But they have
Mm-hmm.
rules that they are working within the rules to make something new. And I
Mm-hmm.
probably could have got into that, but instead I went to college and majored in film production.
Okay. Okay.
and did nothing with it.
Well, no, I disagree. I would disagree because film, there's the advice that the cliched advice that parents should give their children is, figure out what you want to do, study hard, become that thing, become a doctor or whatever, and stay determined and focused, and definitely don't job hop and all that crap. But when you tell me that you studied film, that was training in how to tell a story in movement.
Right.
It's like it's action. Like it's not if there's no action in a movie, it's boring. You need to have some kind of movement or some kind of displacement of something to move a character, to move a story. And so, like for example, in your cake, like now that I'm looking at it, you thought of making the path for the moth larva,
Yes,
whatever.
Mothra.
Like you can see the moth, but you can see that it's actually furrowed a path in the icing, and also the same thing for the tail of Godzilla. Like it shows that wait a second, they've been on this journey. Like they've been moving. Like like it's just a cake. It's just plastic toys in icing, but your arrangement tells me that you've had some training in narrative.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I've made short films before, and I've written scripts. I took a screenwriting class at UT, and then recently I took a screenwriting class with a professional screenwriter. He's now in Houston. He teaches at U of H, but he's been out in
Mm-hmm.
LA and he's had things made. He's had his movies
Mm-hmm.
actually progress into movies. So I feel like he's legit. He can
Yeah,
good
yeah.
guidance. But yeah, it's all about storytelling and structure, which I know a lot of people think structure, that's a bad thing. And I'm like, no, it's not. Structure is freeing. As odd as that
Yeah, you
sounds,
need it.
it's freeing. Yeah, you've got your set things. Now you can do whatever within it. And then once you learn that, you can be like, well, I'm going to break the structure. But learn the structure
Right.
first. So
So
yeah.
you aren't that much of a weirdo. You're not that much of a nut job because even your crazy cake makes a symbolic sense.
Yes. And plus, I love cake.
Okay. How many siblings do you have?
I have an older sister, and that's it.
That's it?
Yep.
You two? Okay. And how many mothers do you have?
One mother. Well, I have
Okay, and how many
stepmom.
fathers?
I do have stepmom.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
I,
And I'm just asking dumb questions. That's my role to ask the dumbest questions. That's great. So we've discovered that you're a weirdo. You make clothes. You play music. You perform in front of thousands, which takes a certain kind of person. You've studied film. You've made a few clips. And the way you earn your bread is by discussing finance, writing about finance. Look, this is what we do.
yes.
So is there more that you would like to share about your cake?
I think that's pretty much it. It shows my love for the monster genre
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
dioramas and obviously cake because I'm like, who doesn't like cake? you know.
Yeah, most people go like cake. Just from my observation and my learning and knowing you, I appreciate your quirkiness and there's a fearlessness in sort of going on stage and being and making music and being in costume and making music. But to a certain extent, you inhabit a kind of character. You're like, oh, tonight I'm being weird. I'm going as whatever. Okay, but then to make the decision, a conscious decision of okay, I'm going on this podcast, and one of the images I'm going to present, which is a kind of a pillar, a symbolic pillar, is this appreciation for dioramas. Like a diorama is in a way it's like a frozen moment. The way a photograph is a frozen moment. So a diorama is like this kind of like, well, I'm going to create a narrative out of, well, not necessarily cake, but whatever, like I'm going to, like in a museum, here's this frozen moment that's meant to kind of represent a time in the past. I don't know. I'm getting the impression that you're a very I love the fact that I have no idea where we're going next because should we move on to the next photo?
Sure, let's go.
Oh, Haruki, that's now I know why you're on the podcast. Love it.
Yes.
Okay, so a few weeks ago, a few episodes ago, I'm so bad with names.
Julie.
Julie.
Yes.
Julie, right. Julie was on the podcast, and she had mentioned going into this world of publishing and how she has an author that I needed to meet. And I've forgotten the name, but here it is, Carrie Carter. Wrote, and we discussed a book called Whiskers Abroad. And this is the photo. It was great is that this image is the same image that Julie had, but it's from two perspectives. So here is the cover of your book, Whiskers Abroad, Ashi and Audrey's Adventures in Japan. There's 3 red suitcases, kind of arranged almost like a sculpture. On one of the red suitcases is a gray cat looking at the photographer. And in the background, there's the map of Japan. Okay, take it away.
All right. Well, I wrote a book, and
Woo!
It's getting published. So those are 2
Nice.
huge accomplishments in themselves. So this is the cover of my book, and it's about, obviously, you're like, Whiskers Abroad, Ashi and Audrey's Adventures in Japan. Like that. Hopefully you get a good idea of what it's about. It's about a woman and her cat, and they travel to Japan, and it's about their adventures and their stories, and then you get the human's perspective, and then you get the cat's perspective. And it's told like a diary entry, so you get 2 different ones. And Audrey's kind of like excitable and a little goofy and a little bit like me. In fact, all the pictures in there are me. And the cat's a little bit more weary and like, I don't know about that. This may be dangerous. And once he does it, he's, hey, let's do it again. But he also kind of has this sense that he has to protect Audrey. He keeps an eye on her. And the book is also serves as a travel guide. It's got all the places that I go to are real places. You can do all the things in there. And I have websites, I have links to the tickets and the trains and how to use them, and there's like tips in there. So it's also kind of a travel guide. It's like a hybrid.
Amazing. I'm going to treat you as if you're Franz Kafka, but have you actually been to Japan?
14 times.
What?
Yes. I have to let you in on a little secret about that, though.
Okay.
My husband used to work for Continental Airlines, which then became United, and he had flight benefits. So we could fly standby for free, and it's easier to get from Houston to Japan than it was to, say, go to Houston to Europe, because Europe you have to stop in Newark, and there's a risk you're going to get bumped and you're not going to get your flight moving on. So we would take Houston because it's a direct flight, from Houston to Japan. And so we took advantage of his flight benefit as much as we could.
Amazing. So always Japan, Tokyo, or other cities?
No. Various cities. We would always spend some time in Tokyo because Tokyo is huge. And you could spend years in there and still not see everything. But we would go out to maybe the countryside. I mean, we went down all the way down south to Kagoshima. We were there when Sakurajima is an active volcano. We were there when it erupted, and I slept through the whole thing.
That's amazing.
And it blew out windows and cars, and I slept through it all.
What?
So yeah,
that's amazing.
We've been all over. It's like I have friends who live in Japan who are Japanese, and they're like, "You've been to more places in Japan than I have."
That's great. So talk about cats.
About cats? Well, I've always had cats growing up. We also had a dog, but we also had cats. And I've always been a huge fan. I got my own 2 cats on my own as an adult. And now I only have one, but she's a little cute thing. But I had to throw her out because she's noisy and likes to get into things and rattle the door.
When you say throw her out, you mean out of your bedroom while you're sleeping?
I threw her outside, out of the house.
Oh.
Yeah, so she's indoor, outdoor. She comes and goes. She does what she wants.
Yeah, she does what she wants. You sleep through a volcano erupting, but your cat is too loud for you.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Let's walk through that, or let's dive into that world of writing a book. Okay, so how long did it take for you to get this manuscript together?
5 years. It took
Yes,
5 years,
right.
yeah. It started off as an idea, and then, like, me and my sister came up with the idea, because my sister did all the graphics and the layout and the design of the book.
Respect. And so Stacey Vickers,
Yes.
nice. That's really great because yeah, it's actually a beautiful like design is it's just a way of seeing the world. And so, for example, just like when I started talking to you and seeing the photos, like I understand a little bit about design enough to recognize somebody who has that in them. And obviously the designer of your book is going to be like that, but the fact that you allowed those choices to happen, it's clearly a beautifully designed work. So you work together.
Yes, we did. And I think it's also a lot of fun, just the pictures and the. Because we went in there and we photoshopped the cat into places in Japan. So, like, he's really there, you know.
Oh, okay. How many pages? Is this a long
I
book
think
or
it's around 170 pages.
okay? And is the tone
Quirky. It's quirky,
I wonder where that came
humorous.
from.
It's not too serious, you know. What's really bizarre about the whole thing is I wrote it, and people read it, and they're just like, that was hilarious. And I'm like, it was? Like, to me, that's shocking. I'm like, really? You thought it was funny? I mean, I didn't expect it to be one way or the other. I just wrote it. I just wrote what I enjoyed, what I thought the cat would do.
Well, so one of the previous guests that I had, Anne Charles. So Anne Charles, it took her a while. Like she actually wrote a few books before she had a book published. And then once she got it published and she kind of got past that hump, she churns out like a book every 6 months. But it's a full operation. It's,
Right.
it's like full on,
It's
right?
a full time job.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think it's what she does. But she's got like a full like you should yeah, if you haven't listened to it, she's lots of fun. She's super awesome. So Anne Charles, it's just interesting in that, in terms of your process, you're a working writer and you are an author. So why don't you talk about your writing? Like how did you fall into writing?
Oh, I've always loved stories and fiction. And I read books as a little kid. I read all the Ramona Quimby books, and I was a big fan of Trixie Belden, which I think she's a little old school, but and Nancy Drew. I was a big Nancy Drew fan.
Hmm.
And
The rapper?
no, Nancy Drew, the
Oh, sorry, sorry,
mystery.
sorry, sorry. I was being stupid again. I was being stupid again.
I was like, I don't know, there might be a rapper named Nancy Drew. It wouldn't surprise me.
Sure.
But yeah, I would write stories. Starting in third grade, I started writing my own stories. And I was the person solving the mystery, but there was never really any mystery in the story. I would just go
Mm.
somewhere where I shouldn't be, and then I would get hit on the head and knocked unconscious and wake up later, and it was all okay. Ha ha ha. Like, every
Oh, the
story
bad
was
old
that
trope.
way.
Okay, so in Whiskers Abroad, you have Ashley and Audrey.
Mhm.
So in terms of their dynamic, like why did you fall on that as your narrative play? I mean, it's probably a really good device to. I mean, because in a way, you said it's written as a kind of an adventure book or a kind of a guide.
Yeah, it's a lot of kind of he said, she said, different perspectives. And
Okay.
the real reason, this is going to sound totally dumb, but the real reason why I selected Audrey and Ashi, a cat and a human, was
Mm-hmm.
because I'm always looking for my purpose in life, my ikigai, and I feel like I can never find it. And I always harass my friends every year, and I send them a list. I'm like, here's the things I like. What should I do? you know? And they're all like, stop doing this. Just stop it. But my sister goes, well, why don't you just take a handful of what you like and write about it? And I was
Mm.
like, oh, that's a really good idea. I can write about food and cats and Japan and traveling. And they're like, there you go. There's the concept.
Right, right. So you've had dogs and you've had cats.
Hmm.
How about you talk about the way of seeing the world that a cat does, right? Because
Right.
if you're inhabiting the cat as a character and you're thinking a lot about like a cat's reaction and the fact that he's a male cat and all that stuff. So what observations can you make about the way a cat inhabits a space?
Well, the first thing a cat does is what a cat wants to do. It will
Sure.
not do anything. Well, I mean, that there's exceptions, of course. There's people who train their cats, but for the most part, the cat wants you to pet him, he'll come on over and be like, "Pet me." If he doesn't want to pet him,
Mm-hmm.
he'll walk off. He doesn't care unless he's in danger. But he doesn't. As long as he's content and happy, he will do exactly what he wants. And you always got to remember that or I try to remember that when I was writing that character.
Mm.
And then there's different cat personalities. I used to have a cat named Osty who just loved people. Loved
Mm-hmm.
people. Like, if I had a party, she was happy. She would go from lap to lap to lap in a circle and just keep going around all night getting petted. And now the cat I have right now, she's terrified of other people. She hides from them. So there's different personalities. So I was just like, okay, he's a little egotistical and, he likes to be petted, but he also likes being in his comfort zone. But he's
Mm-hmm.
curious because cats are curious, right? So I feel like any cat was given an opportunity to do something new, even if they were scared, their curiosity would win over, you know?
As a kind of a foil, so we've got Ashi the cat and Audrey the human. Yeah?
Yes.
And so Audrey the human, in terms of the story, like does it progress through a kind of a narrative sort of a conflict or a moment or whatever, or are they just having an adventure?
They're mostly having an adventure. They go throughout the country, and it's like whatever they do that day. There's a little bit that's an overall arc, but not a whole lot.
Mm.
It's mostly independent stories.
What I'm trying to say is like, if somebody were looking at this as a screenwriter, what is the action other than travel?
The action, for the most part, is just them discovering new things, and
Mm.
mostly being excited by it. Sometimes they're not, but for the most part, they're excited. And
Okay.
it's just also about how inappropriate it would be to take your cat to Japan on vacation. You know, you don't do that. You can't do that.
No, it's funny how I just kind of glazed over that because I think when I spoke with Julie, I was just like, "What? Yeah, of course, taking your cat on vacation." Um, there must be people who do that, right? Yeah,
I
there must be.
I don't know. I mean, internationally, it'd be very difficult.
Right,
But I know there's people in the United States that travel and they take their cats and they put them on leashes and they walk them and they take
right.
pictures and put them up on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah. The support animals.
Yeah,
Yeah,
these aren't this cat.
got it, got it. Well, so Whiskers Abroad, Ashley and Audrey, how are because it's not published yet, it's not printed yet, or it
No,
is published.
it's not. It's coming. It's launching October 6th, so you'll be able to get your EPUB then, or you can order it then, or you can order an
Mm-hmm.
actual physical book. We're having
Yeah.
a pre-sale of like your EPUB or Kindle or whatever
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like to read it on. That is
Sure.
happening now. You can order it, but you won't get it until October 6th.
Are you working on another one, or is this?
I'm sort of, well, I was thinking about doing a sequel where they go back to Japan, but I'm like, for
Mm-hmm.
that to be successful, I need to go back to Japan and make sure all the things on my notes they're all still around and they still exist,
Right.
especially with COVID. Like, I went to Japan and I saw the robot show, which is a very touristy thing to do, but it's absolutely amazing. It is so bizarre and mind blowing, and you're just like, what am I watching? But it's no longer around. COVID. It
Okay.
went away with COVID because
The robots got COVID.
the people seeing it were the tourists.
Oh,
No
right, right, right.
tourists. Of course, I think it'll come back once the tourists come back.
Sure.
But I would have to go and check that kind of stuff out. And the borders right now for Japan, they claim they're open to tourists, but
Mm.
you have to go with a tour group. They tell you where to go, what to eat. I mean, they micromanage you 24/7, and I'm just like, that's not going to work too well for fact checking for a book. So I've shifted to outlining, working on an outline now for South Korea because I've been there a couple of times, and I know they're currently open to tourists.
Nice. Okay. Well, shall we move on to your last photograph?
Sure.
Say what? Okay, dude, you set me up.
Exactly.
Set me up. You're fired. Okay, so in this photograph is it's the interior of a plane. Not quite. I wouldn't call it. Well, actually, it could be business class. Sure. Yeah, nice sort of nice open seating. Yeah, it's kind of business classy plane interior. There's something fishy. Okay, so is the person in the seat you,
That's
or is that
me.
somebody
That
else?
is me.
That's you. Oh
Yes.
wow, look at that. So dressed very conservatively, all black. And so you're because you're in business class after all,
Business
and
class and on standby, so you have to dress up kind of nicer.
of course, yes. So you're sitting there and you're looking at the photographer, and it's all very nice. And in the seat next to you, also in business class, is Ashi.
That is Ashi, yes.
Ashi, yes, Ashi the cat, looking at the photographer, just kind of like, say what? Just kind of like, yeah, I'm in business class. What are you doing? Okay, so take it away.
Well, that is actually a photo from the book. It's in the
Ah,
book, so
nice.
yes. And there's there's a little story about how he gets upgraded from down cargo. He's gonna be in the cargo because he's a cat, and
Mm-hmm.
cats travel in the cargo, and he gets himself upgraded to business class.
Of course.
He charms the person into upgrading him. So
Photoshopped.
yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Must have been. Must have been. Oh, it's
Yeah, I don't think
fantastic.
they allow cats to sit freely in your seat.
Yeah. It's a good point. Okay, so where are we going to go from here? Like it's the impossibility or the I mean basically this is a kind of diorama that you've created.
Yeah, and basically it's just it kind of I wanted to put it in here because it sets the tone of the book. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty silly. I mean, a cat in business class, like really?
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
kind of from that photo, you're going to get something that's more on the lighthearted side. It's not You're
Sure.
not going to have the meaning of life in it. Although you might consider eating ramen for the first time your meaning of life.
Sure. Well, in the smallest things, you can have, it's like that Marcel Proust idea, right? Of like, he bites into the Madeleine, and then all of a sudden that triggers all of these memories. And in the same way, I mean, maybe you can find that moment of in silliness, right? Um, Wait, where were we going? I'm going to edit all this out. Don't worry, or maybe I won't. We'll see what happens. Me flailing, but wait
We're
a
talking
second,
about
like.
meaning of life in little things. And
Yes, right. Haruki Murakami. Have you read Haruki Murakami?
yes.
Now look, first of all, that's big praise, big shoes to fill. I'm putting you in the same passenger cabin with Haruki Murakami. Okay. So, do you like him at all?
Yes. I have to say I've only read one book though. And I've
Oh, which
started
one?
the second one. Oh gosh, the Traveling Cat Chronicles. And I
Okay.
started the second one about the cat in the neighborhood, but I don't think the story's really about the cat, but I haven't gotten far enough into
No.
it.
In all of his books, he's got a cat, or he's got cats in them. Is it the Wind Up Bird Chronicles?
No, I cannot remember the name of it.
My wife bought that book, or she gave me that book to read, and it's called The Wind Up Bird Chronicles. And I've bought that book for many, many people because it's that magical realism, right? Like
Right.
you're living your life, and then all of a sudden something really crazy happens. So yeah, yeah. So why don't you take that notion of magical realism and riff on that
Oh,
in
wow.
terms of your work?
Yeah, I mean, because obviously there is an element of magical realism if you've got a cat that types, and travels and manipulates situations. Like he wants to go, there's a chapter in the book where he wants to go out exploring on his own. He doesn't want his owner with him. So he convinces her, walks and guides her to a Tex Mex restaurant in Tokyo. So here he is in this Tex Mex restaurant, and he's like pushing the menu and pointing at the margaritas. And she's like, ooh, margaritas. So she drinks a bunch and she gets back to the room and passes out. And so he uses that opportunity to escape from the room and go have his own adventure on his own.
Does a cat talk? No.
No, he doesn't talk. He does type.
He writes. He
Right.
doesn't talk, of course. What is some kind of lunatic? Okay. Okay. So are there spoilers? Like, if you tell me what happens, like, should I put a spoiler alert? Like, does he kill somebody?
No, there's nothing bad, nothing bad. And it's just like seeing Japan for the first time, from trying to do it from a cat's
Mm.
perspective. Like he goes to the cat cafe. I guess that's not a spoiler. I don't know. But he goes to the cat cafe and he meets the cats there, and he's talking to him because he wants to talk to the other cats. And he's like, "You've never left the cat cafe?" And she's like, "No, this is where I live."
There's dialogue though.
Yes, they talk to each other. They speak. She speaks
So the
Japanese.
cats.
He speaks English, but they speak the universal cat language.
Okay. Okay. I kind of feel I should have smoked pot or something before this call or something. But I love. Okay, so as we're talking, there's a cat on a business class seat. You're seated because it's kind of like, are you meant? You're meant to be the sort of the stand-in for the Audrey.
Yeah,
Yes. So
yeah.
you said you're in all the photos.
Yes, and if you notice in the photos, or you're not supposed to notice, but of course you're going to notice, like because they were taking over different trips, like my hair is all different styles and different lengths. In
Ah,
some pictures I'm really skinny, and other pictures not so much.
that sounds like a Godzilla movie.
And my sister commented on it. She's like, "Well, aren't you concerned?" I'm like, "Nah, it adds to the humor."
Well, there is that kind of Godzilla aesthetic, right?
Yes.
Like it's kind of like you see the wires. Wait a second. So let's tie this back, man. Let's wrap this into a bundle, into a nice beautiful package,
Okay.
into a nice beautiful cake. This idea that somebody listening to this, hopefully, will go check out your book, have a good laugh, learn about Japan. But how do we inspire the person to write their own book, jump in, start a band?
You just do it, and you're going to be bad, and you're going to be awful to begin with. But you just do it, and you get better, and you get confident. And if it's something you really like doing, you pursue it. And if you start doing it and you're like, God, this is a lot more work than I thought it would be, and it's not very fun, and it's stressing me out, then stop doing it. You don't have to keep doing it. That's my advice. Just go for it.
Did anybody give you that advice before?
No, not really. I kind of got the opposite advice.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Okay, you got the opposite advice. Who gave you that opposite advice?
Well, like my parents and my grandparents, and they're like, play it safe, go get a degree that will get you a nice paying job and a career that you know for sure it's not going to be a waste, like a film degree.
And yet you're doing one of the most corporate jobs.
I know. I just started doing it not too long ago, too.
Okay. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those funny little quirks, right? That, okay, we can't tell what's in the future.
But you know what? I did travel as a kid. We did go travel, and I would say I was encouraged to travel, to go see the world as much as I can. And like any opportunity that came up, I took it. I used to travel around or drive around with my passport on me at all times, just in case
What?
somebody was like, "Let's fly to such and such." I'm like, "I'm ready. Let's go."
Really? Really?
It's only happened once.
Wait. But it's happened once?
Yeah, but it wasn't international, but it was a random last minute trip with my husband at the time, boyfriend. We had just started dating, and I was at work, and he called me. He goes, "You want to go to LA?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, sure." He's like, "All right, come over. We'll go to the airport." I'm like, "You mean tonight?" And he's like, "Yeah, tonight."
Nice. Nice. I love that. Yeah, we only live once, right?
Yes.
For sure.
We also picked the worst time to go to LA because it was all on fire, or in the surrounding area
Oh,
was
really?
on fire.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny you should say that. I'm actually now my job is helping a company that does air sensors because of fires, wildfires, and sort of how it impacts on air quality. So maybe I'll get them on the podcast as well.
That'd be interesting.
So here's what's also really interesting. Okay, I've had a few people from Houston. One person who was there during Hurricane Harvey.
Hmm.
Right now, were you in Houston back then, or
Yes, yes.
were you impacted by the hurricane, or?
No, because at the time I lived in a neighborhood, an area called the Heights, and hence
Okay.
the
Oh, good.
name.
Yeah.
It's the highest point in Houston, so we didn't flood. But you couldn't get in and out the neighborhood. That was all flooded, you know. But we did okay.
Yeah, but I'm sure you've had people you
Oh,
knew.
totally, yeah. Lots of people I know have like lost everything.
Really? Wow. Okay, so this many years on, is it just like this weird dream, this weird memory, this weird time? How do you think about that stuff?
For me personally, I'm always a little nervous when another storm comes through because the way Houston keeps building up and adding more concrete, it floods easier and easier with each,
Oh,
over
really?
time. Yeah, so it's always a concern. We moved out of the Heights, and I was like, "Did this neighborhood flood?" And they're like, "It didn't flood during Harvey." So I'm like, "Well, it's probably okay then." I mean, that was like 55 inches in 24 hours.
Right.
Actually, I think it was 30 inches the first 24 hours and 55 over like 2 or 3 days.
Also love the fact that so your husband, is he from Texas?
Yes, he also grew up in Texas.
Who's got the thicker Texas accent between you and him?
Probably me.
Really? Yeah, because I can hear it. Because usually in Houston, I couldn't hear anybody with the accent, but in you, I kind of hear something in there. I
Yeah,
love
but
it.
you gotta remember I grew up in LaPorte. So it's a
I don't know
little
what that means.
it's a little
That's like
rednecky.
Tokyo. Really?
Yeah.
I thought they said Laporte was the Okinawa of Texas.
Oh God, no.
I'm just joking. I have no idea.
I was like, is Okinawa that horrible?
I have no idea. They call Tokyo the Houston of Japan, which again also doesn't make
I
sense.
can see that for the summertime because the weather's similar. It's hot and humid there. It doesn't get as hot, but it is humid, so like I can get that part.
So Carrie Carter, you've given us some advice to just do it. You've talked about cats and planes. You finished your book that's going to come out in October, which is super exciting. Anything else, last but not least?
Go out and try new things. Don't be afraid of it.
Carrie, listen, I love the fact that you're a person who, in your own path, adventure, journey, whatever, you went traveling with a cat. Like, this is how you landed.
Well, I'm hoping it really takes off.
Well, one of the things that is, I've had a lot of authors on the podcast, and I think I'll leave this actually in the podcast because this is kind of interesting. Is that for a lot of first time authors, they write the book. Like for you, it's 5 years of work. You finally edit it. You finally get it together. You finally get it printed. It finally gets released, and then the hustle doesn't stop. Like you still have to hustle.
Yeah, you still have to promote it and push it if you want anyone to ever hear about it. Because,
Yep, because you're competing.
yeah, I'm not with the big five where they're going to run an ad anywhere. I've got a small micro press, which, Julie is great.
Yeah, but even if you were with the big
You still have to promote, yeah.
the window of time it's actually in people's consciousness is very short because there's so much stuff.
I know. I know. And I know, like, I feel like the more people watch TikTok and short videos, like, their attention span's getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
But people are reading a lot. Like people are reading a lot.
People will always read. Someone's like, oh, it's a dying industry. I'm like, it will never die. People like stories, and they will always want to read.
Carrie, look, I will look out for the book. Thank you. I really appreciate your time and write the next book. You have to write another book.
Well, I've got some other stuff working in the works too. That's not Whiskers Abroad. Different books.
Like fund management things, yeah.
One of them's a little bit more serious, and one of
I
them's
was
a little
just
bit more
kidding.
fun. That still has a cat in it though.
You have a website?
It's carriecarterwrites.com.
Thank you, Carrie Carter writes.
Thank you for having me on.
For sure, you're awesome.
All right,
Okay,
thanks.
bye.
Bye.
Shooting it raw?
Yes.